Today's Wednesday. Morning, everybody. Welcome back to Chai Together. I am your host and founder, Pradeep Day. You are tuning in for your cup of courage, hope, and imagination today. So we use courage on this platform to showcase our stories. We use hope to overcome, and we use imagination to resonate and understand with the stories that are being shared. So with that, I'd like to welcome my friend, Mr. Cyrus Dixon.
Good morning, Miss Day. How are you doing today?
Oh, Miss Day, thanks. I feel pretty good.
Great, great. Listen, it's always a good day, right? Even if it's a bad day, figure out a way to make it great. So I'm super excited to finally be here. I think we've been talking about this for quite some time.
Yeah, and then you left to Jamaica.
Had a wonderful time there. Didn't want to come back, but glad I spent some time with you.
You should get a property in Jamaica.
You know what? We're working on it. It's a wonderful conversation that we have had where we have a team that's kind of browsing for us. And so you never know.
I like
we
it.
May be able to do this in Jamaica one day.
Yeah, and I like that we're colorful. You got your blue, your background matches me. I like all of that. So let me tell the viewers. Yeah, we're coordinating. I always do this with my guests, like unintentionally, but I think it's the universe's intention that I match, my guests. So
got it.
Yeah, serious. All right, so I'm going to let the people know about you. So Cyrus Dixon is the CEO and founder of Discover the Real Estate in You, born and raised in Kentucky with his parents, Peggy and Walter Dixon, along with his sisters, Reesa and Rachel. His father is his best friend and has groomed Cyrus to be the man he is today. Now living in Virginia, he celebrates 9 years happily married to his rib, his rock, and the love of his lifetime, Dot Dixon. As a youth advocate with a passion to help people in any way that he can, he encourages people to remain students of life, pursue their education, and live out their dreams. You can find Cyrus at Cyrus B. Dixon on all platforms and cyrusbdixon.com.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
So where do you want to start?
Listen, wherever you want to start. I think there's so many things that are going on in the world and society today. I think that it's very important that people understand just how to navigate life in the environment that we're in. So I'm open. Where do you want to start it?
Let's start with your childhood.
Childhood. Listen, I had a phenomenal childhood, right?
Wow.
Nurtured and groomed. My parents to this day have been married for 47, 48 years.
Wow.
And the process of watching their marriage evolve over time has really dropped nuggets and seeds in my life, right? I remember growing up that my father would always be at all of my football games. He would always give me guidance, counseling. He was my support. He was my rock. And, I think it's very vital for young people, especially young men today, to actually have a father figure that they can trust in, lean on, that would nurture them and guide them. But phenomenal childhood, long story short, right? Parents are amazing. I have an older sister and a younger sister, and they kept me on my toes. I'm the only boy, so you can imagine a house full of 3 children and 2 girls and me. I was always into stuff, into the neighborhood. I was always active, but I had a blessed childhood, and I'm excited to be able to say that it really formed me into the person I am, and it's helping me become more of the man that I've seen my father to be throughout the years.
And this was in Kentucky.
It is. So everyone knows University of Kentucky, the home of the Wildcats, but they also know about the Kentucky Derby and horses, and being able to be in an area that's known for horses, known for, high excellence in sports and basketball. I think it was the horses that really I gravitated to. But to see an animal operate at its fullest capacity, right? We as humans think, how can I do something? And then we may do it and we may be timid, maybe slightly afraid. Might be some drawback, but animals do everything at 100% as long as they're not physically ill. And so to watch horses run, to race, to be able to groom them, to nurture them, it was actually amazing to see and do. So yeah,
I've been to Kentucky. I've been all over Kentucky, and I've been outside of the university too. It's interesting. I asked that question because I remember when I went there, I was the only brown individual, and I was getting some looks, and this father was pulling back his children and a Dairy Queen because maybe he didn't like my parents at the time. I was younger, very colorful tattoos. So it's interesting. My experience was more of like an outsider experience. Like I didn't see many people like me there. Went to Lexington, Richmond, Berea, where I stayed at. So, did you ever face any racism there?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah,
It's
because
very interesting going back home
mhm,
with a different mentality of when I was raised there. And so, oftentimes, anytime you get out of an area and you move to somewhere different than where you were raised, you're
mhm,
introduced to a different mindset for the people that are in the area. And so, relocating from Kentucky to Virginia, and then even when I go back, I see difference. But growing up in that environment was it was a very oppressive, so to speak, and it didn't allow me to tap into who I wanted to become and needed to become because I needed a broader view on life. And I remember as a childhood, there was a very traumatic scene, a situation that happened with a friend of ours in the community, a young man who actually got killed by police violence. He ran and went into a closet, and police shot him in the closet with his hands up. It was terrible. It happened, I want to say, in 19. But there were layers and layers of that type of behavior. But you have to grow through those behaviors, and that's what I actually ultimately ended up doing, was maturing through that behavior and that mindset.
hmm. I'm sorry, what year was that in?
I want to say it was in 1996.
Wow.
Police
We can
brutality.
say I feel like I mean, I don't watch news and things, but obviously I know what happens through people and all,
Yeah,
but do you feel like anything's changed? I feel like nothing's changed there.
I do believe like some things have changed.
Mhm.
I do believe that the mindset and the reach that the community have that were victims of, different type of um, attacks, right? They're
Yeah.
starting to look differently and sound differently.
Mm.
And just the conversations that I have now when I go back home and talk to people, they
Mhm.
want more, and so they're diving in and they're discovering, how do I get more out of life than what's been given to me, and they're actually writing their own future versus living out one that's been handed to them by society and by people that control the narrative.
Hmm. Yeah, I still feel like regarding the police violence, I just feel like that's still the same. Do you feel it's the same?
It's brought more attention to it. I
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily say it feels the same.
Mhm.
The way that the communities and communities across the country are able to call out the behavior, maybe
Mhm.
not verbally, but through video and the recordings, I think that shines a broader light on people's behaviors, and ultimately is going to be more attention to just the state of how is policing in different communities, how it actually works. And I do think we're on the cusp of change, even though some people say they think that the change is far, past due and is not going to see it. I think we are closer to seeing that change because of the
Oh.
repetitive communication of what we're seeing in the communities and the capturing of all the everything that happens.
I like that thinking because we are the change, essentially. It's if you say it's far out, you're saying it's not in you. You're saying like, oh, later after I'm gone, maybe someone will do something. But, you said you faced racism there as well. So what did that look like for you?
It really included profiling, right?
Mhm.
A lot of profiling, and what most people don't understand is when profiling is present,
Mhm.
you also have to know how to act and react. And I think in a lot of communities, we're not taught how to effectively act and how effectively to react in a proper manner that keeps that profiling to a minimal, or that limits our being on the negative side of that conversation. And so I attribute that to my father,
Mhm.
right? He always taught me to look a man in his eyes,
Mm.
always to talk firm, always, never to hold my head down, always be clear, and always effectively communicate. And I think that effective communication is actually what allowed me to handle a lot of the situations where I get pulled over by officer, where I'm accused of stealing something, where I've been targeted. I never look at it like a moment to let my anger and my emotions explode. I always look at it like a moment. Okay, let me pause and remember the things that my father and my parents have taught me, in order to have a conversation that will help navigate both sides so that we have support. And some of that is oftentimes, hey, listen, let me speak to your superior, right? I think a lot of people don't understand when police officers ask them certain questions, they can actually say, I don't answer questions. And by saying I don't answer questions, then, you have the space for the officer to try to verbally detain you, he tries to physically detain you, but just simply by saying, hey, listen, I don't answer questions, right? That ends all communications. And most of the times, those officers that are familiar with this concept, they'll kind of digress and take a different approach to being aggressive and wanting that face-to-face interaction or the confrontation. So I mean, it's interesting. It's something that we have to teach our children, unfortunately, how to have a conversation with police officers at 9 and 10 and 11 and on up, so that they're not targeted. But then if they are, they know how to navigate and have that conversation with intelligence.
Have you seen the movie The Hate You Give?
The Hate You Give, I have not.
Yeah, because in the beginning of the movie, they have similar scene what you're describing, where the father is teaching his young children, even younger than 8, 9, that what to do when a police officer pulls you over. Always make your hands visible, etc. And the fact that he had to teach them, and I feel like similar, just as how your father, maybe just to be known how you should respect other people as a man. I feel like he showed you that, but I also feel like he's taught you that so you don't get misperceived and things like that, hold your head up high, etc. Also because you are a minority. Do you feel like that's also why he told you how to look and how to be,
I think really he made sure that I was understanding of my surroundings at all times, right?
Mm-hmm.
My father's always said, Cyrus, when I'm not here, you're the priest of the home, you're the provider, and you're the protector. And so that literally means I had to operate as if he was absent, but in the capacity that he did when he was there. And I think that mindset and mentality caused me to just be able to look and assess situations and process things that are just, to me, that are normal, but to most that would probably say that's not normal and abnormal because maybe they weren't exposed to it. So I think that's what I really attribute it to, because it's giving me a rooting and a grounding. And from there, it's just being able to relay this and allow other people to see from the same perspective in the eyes that I see now.
Wow. So overall, did you enjoy Kentucky? You like it there?
I did. I think it was great for the season and the time that I was there. I think I got to a place where I wanted more in life. And I remember leaving and moving away from home. I remember the conversations that people said, well, he'll be back, or it's not going to work. I remember the bets that were placed that I'll be back in a year or 2 years. And if I fed into that energy and I fed into the attention that they were giving me, to do that and always consider going back home a second option, I probably would have went there, but I didn't, right? I had to really plow in. I had to really decide what I wanted for myself and make this transition from Kentucky to Virginia to work. The crazy thing about my transition is I literally moved from Kentucky to Virginia with no apartment. I signed my first ever lease in West Virginia as I transitioned in here. I stayed in the Days Inn my first night, and then after the Days Inn, I stayed in my first ever apartment. And it was that transition piece that allowed me to say, listen, there's no going back. And I'm going to have to work what I have in order to make it work for me so that I can create the future and the life that I want to live. And I'm doing that.
So how did that work out? So did you already have a job when you moved?
Listen, I did not. I was at a job in Kentucky, a very famous roofing, a car roofing company called Webasto. And I relocated about 3 weeks later once I decided to move. And when I got here, it was really just pedal to the metal, grit to the grind, and go for it. And in doing so is when I kind of met my wife and things started to turn in my favor to where I've been able to establish the company that we have. Me and my wife as a real estate investors in the local area, and started to branch out and do a lot of other things that I imagined and dreamed. And some things I've been able to do I really haven't dreamed and thought of. It just came and I kind of assessed it, counted my costs, and decided to either go with it or not. So that's it.
So what are those other things? I know you work with youth, right?
Yeah, listen, so recently I think I'm on the cusp of becoming a football coach, right? For
Oh
some
my
youth.
God.
I know absolutely nothing about football. I'm a baseball fanatic, love basketball. But football has never been my field of interest because I was always so tiny growing up. I wasn't able to play. But I think my vision for what I'm doing now with youth are really to go out and reach youth where they are in their field of expertise, in their field of love and their comfort, and actually give them the tools that my father gave me at home, but give them the tools in their field that they can pertain to and apply. Because life is about living off of principles. And if
Mm.
you teach children the right principles in the wrong seasons, they can apply the right principles and get the right results. And I think that's really where I am. So there's a lot of community endeavors I'm doing. Also going to be working with a couple local juvenile correctional centers as the pandemic and the COVID lift, like the restrictions. But super excited about that because I want to be able to give back to young people, especially young men who may not know how to get to the next place in life, right? I tell people oftentimes Michael Jordan didn't discover his purpose until his father put a basketball in his hand. Like, so
Wow.
think about the responsibility that the father had to see, the skill, the talent that he had to see in the son once he got control of the ball. And then as a father, he nurtured that. That's the reason why when Michael Jordan's father passed, it just ripped him so hard, is because he found his purpose and he mastered his skill, but it came from his father. And where I'm not trying to be the father to many young men, I just want to be the voice that can kind of help them to identify their purpose, help them, implement principles and discover exactly the field that they need to play in and what they need to operate in.
I really like that. So tell me, when you joined with Les Brown, how did that happen?
It's
That's
funny. So join with Les, it was funny because a friend of mine, his name is Ricardo Luazon out of New York. He's brilliant. He's a lifestyle coach. Listen, I encourage you have to have him on here one day. But he was browsing through Clubhouse and he added me to a room where Les Brown was speaking. And I got a couple minutes just to talk to Les Brown. And he said, well, Cyrus, tell me about yourself. So I kind of talked to him about myself and my life and my journey. And he came back and he's, gave me some tidbits and said, listen, I want to share something with you, but I guarantee that I can help you expand your reach in different capacities. And just listening to him, nurture the gift that God has given him. It's allowed a gift in me to wake up to be able to help other people discover their capacities and what they're able to do and who they're able to reach, who they're able to be, which is extremely important because we live in a time where we become what we see on social media. So we log into Instagram, we log into the Twitter of the world and the Snapchats, and our eyes tell our body that's what we need to live, even though our hands don't work to get us there. So there's a deafening of or define of the desire to work, but the wanting of more, which means more people want more, but they're not necessarily willing to do more and do the work. And so now that I'm in a space of doing the work, I'm in a space of also seeing other people help them do the work so that they can see the results. But let's really help me to define and narrow down the scope on what I wanted to do, how I wanted to reach people, and how I want to give back. Because giving back is just as important as moving forward every day.
Wow. So after the Clubhouse call, you joined the program.
Yeah. So after the Clubhouse call, sorry, I joined
It's
the program.
okay.
I was drawn to it, right? The
Yeah.
opportunity to get on Power Voice with John Tellerico and with Les Brown, and just to hear the different mindset that John would teach, and then the execution of the motivational to inspire people. And so once you're in the right state of mind, you can inspire and be inspirational because that's the greatest gift that we have is to inspire. Whoever you can inspire with the level of knowledge and wisdom that you have in this capacity is truly necessary because we're in a time that people need it. And so I connected with John and Les, and it just started to cultivate a greater mindset to be able to develop a program in order to reach back and to tap into the passion that I have for people, but also the passion that I have for real estate.
I really like that. So I know in the program, when I heard you speak, you were mentioning suicide. So how did that come about? When you had like a nice childhood, etc. Tell us more.
Yeah, honestly, I think that even though having a nice childhood, we oftentimes forget that, or even if you don't have a good childhood, right? There are always obstacles that are going to come, right? I teach to my young people now, you're going to face hard times, but let me show you how to navigate through those hard times. And oftentimes when thoughts of depression and suicide roll in, is because we don't see an end other than the end that we want to create for ourselves. We don't see that there's more to life and that this is what I call the curveball of life, right? I love baseball. So if I'm used to fastball pitches, and I'm not expecting a curveball. If I'm not expecting it and I swing and I strike out, I do a detriment to my team. And I think oftentimes um, my attempt in suicide was really a curveball for my life that I did not anticipate and wasn't prepared for. And so I try to make sure people are prepared for these curveballs, because if you live long enough, life is going to throw you a curveball. But the key is to be prepared for it, because the preparation of the curveball means that you can make the adjustment so that you can act accordingly in order to get over the hump and past that hurdle. So yeah, it was a very interesting time of my life, that suicide attempt. But I'm grateful for it.
And
Grateful.
when was that?
It taught me a lot. So my suicide attempt was very interesting. It was really a God encounter in a bathroom. Um, I slipped my wrist twice, and in doing so, I felt life leaving. And I heard God simply say, "How can you take a life that you didn't create?" And it was like I came to myself, and immediately afterwards, I felt like a heat in my chest. And the best way for me to explain it, it felt like a wrestler, a WWE wrestler, punching a 5-year-old in their chest with all of their might into the wall. And so it woke my brother up, and it was just a very, very bad scene in the bathroom. Um, and, and, and just thinking about it, it was God's way of saying, "I have more for you." And in 2020, in 2001, we weren't having such I mean, 2001, 2002, we weren't having such broad conversations about mental health, right? And so I think that God allowed me to survive something that was so gruesome, to be able to help people know that, listen, if you change your mentality, if you set your vision on things above and not beneath, or moving forward and not going backwards, you can literally have and walk into whatever it is that you want to have out of life, as long as your mindset and your mentality match, right? Your mindset and your actions must be on the same page. And that was my moment where I realized that my mindset and my actions were on two completely different pages. And then shortly after that, I just began to reveal the next stage, the next steps, the next phases, the next transitions from my life. And he groomed me, because I felt a lot of rejection afterwards. Yes, I had my immediate family that was there, but a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, a lot of people just rejected me as if I had a cold because I tried to commit suicide, because they didn't want them to start feeling like I felt, and it seemed like they just didn't want to catch something. But I love the fact that there were some people that did stick by me through that hard time, that were friends and some were family. But I think it was the rejection, it was the abandonment, it was the brokenness. It helped make me, because I already had experienced the worst time of my life, and in it there was nothing else that could compare to that time. And so from there, I just started to become a student of life, started on this personal development journey to grow and mature and develop. And in doing so, I'm here today in 2021, excited about my future, but still rejoicing about my past.
Wow, what a speech.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Miss Karen said she likes the analogy of the curveball. And I like what you said, the transparency about the people that weren't there. I feel like we didn't have the education. So I came to this country in 1999. So I was only I think I was like 7 years old during the time.
Uh,
Like, yeah, I think, yeah. So I was in like elementary school during that time. So you're older than me, right?
I was in elementary school in the 90s. Yeah, I graduate. Yeah, I graduate. I'm 38. I'll be 39.
Oh, wow.
Be
I'm
39.
28. So you're
Oh,
10 years older than me.
10 years. Yeah, and I have my birthday is this coming Friday, so super excited about
Oh,
that.
wow. Happy birthday. Oh, and Prissy's birthday is this week too, I believe. Yeah. So I think you guys have maybe the same birthdays.
Tell her I said happy birthday, right?
Yeah. But wait, I wanted to say that, yeah, like there wasn't education available. So when the people, for them to not be there, I just feel it's unfortunate, because if they had the education on mental health and what suicide really is, and a lot of people have this myth about suicide. This is why I recommend qprinstitute.com, where you can, take courses and learn more and become a gatekeeper for suicide prevention. I am, and learn, the approaches to people who may be suicidal, because a lot of people have this myth that, oh, once someone's made up their mind, you can't do anything to change it. That's not true. So I feel like there's a lot to learn, and I don't feel there's still enough focus on suicide, because I have hundreds of people, thousands actually, on social media, but this SEO, we only see hundreds. So I never really see anyone talking about suicide or any extreme topics like how I do, like abortion or rape, or I rarely ever see that, maybe like one or two people in the whole year and a half, I feel. So I don't know, do you really see people talking about this stuff?
I don't. And so it's funny because I have a few friends that are doctors, psychologists, and therapists. And one
Hmm.
of the conversations that they're having and they've had since the pandemic, on the back end of the pandemic, are the psychological impacts and the mental illness that will stem from the handling of the pandemic, right? Not pointing any fingers anywhere,
Hmm.
based on how people have handled it, especially for children because they're still developing. And so when you look out to see, hey, how are the conversations about the things that impact mental health on a broad scale? It's not really there. It's about driving the economy, it's about growth, it's about opportunity, it's about money. But at the same time, you have to address those hidden things, or those not necessarily hidden things, those underlining factors that attribute to a positive mental health or negative mental health, and it's just really not there. And I don't think it's there. I think it's not there because it's not as marketable and as profitable as most. Right? We're
Oh
often,
my gosh, you're
yeah,
so right.
it's not there because the numbers of financial gain may not be as good for you. And why do I care about you and your family when me and my family are okay? And then we'll just tell our children, hey, shrug it off. You're rich,
Wow.
shrug it off, you're wealthy. And it gets overlooked. And by overlooking it, it develops a cesspool of broken people. And I don't mean it in a negative way, but it creates this atmosphere where mental health is such needed that it's going to have to be introduced into our high schools. It's going to have to be introduced to our middle schools, our elementary schools, because if we don't get ahead of it now, what they're saying is the ramifications of what's going to happen 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now is going to be so detrimental that it's literally going to shift the economy. And I believe that is going to happen. So, yeah, it needs to be discussed.
Wow. You hit the nail on the head. That's so accurate. It's so
Yeah.
accurate. And it makes me realize something about my own like program that I created about mental health.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting because I'm having a how would you say, I don't know if it's revelation is the right word, but I'm coming to a conclusion that it's interesting because I put my of course I'm valuable, right? So I put out a program recently and it's a higher ticket item. And it's very interesting because from my understanding, it's failed to this market, like my try to get a community,
Mhm.
and a lot of people can't afford it, right? It doesn't mean that it's anything within me. It's just that people can't afford it, especially with mental health and stuff. And it's so correct what you said, that it's not marketable in that sense, because usually when you see mental health resources, they're like nonprofits, etc. So it's something to really think about, and I feel like that is a very accurate description, what you're saying there. So I want to know more about like what you're doing now, and like what is your dream, you know?
Honestly, I'm actually in my wealthy place, right? I'm in my place of my dream, and as I continue to move forward in life, I'm starting to see the dream just grow bigger now, right? I never imagined going from a place where I tried to commit suicide to now I'm being a real estate investor and owning a business that does 6 figures a year in that, and growing my coaching and mentoring program. And so I love connecting people and having conversations around real estate and how real estate really applies to us personally.
Mm,
Because when you look at a natural building, there's certain things that are required, but then there's certain pieces of mind that building also requires. And being able to have that conversation with a person about their heart and their life and being able to break it down is really passionate for me. And so with those two being the passions that I'm actually in, I'm actually in the investing world that I once thought about but never dreamed of in this capacity, right? And that dream looks like, acquiring real estate, brokering deals, working with partners, building buildings, renovating
wow.
properties. And so I take this exact same concept and I teach people how to do that and talk to them about their life and seeing their life through the eyes of real estate.
I really like that. It's creative. That's what we're here to do.
It is. I think everyone has an innate creative ability inside of them,
Mm-hmm.
but oftentimes it's not nurtured. And if you don't nurture a child's creativity, it also they oftentimes abandon it as they get older. Like think about it. When we were children, right? Everybody had an imaginary friend, and then
Mm-hmm.
when we told as we got older that imaginary friend isn't good to have because now you have to function differently in society.
Mm-hmm.
If we all would have kept our childhood creativity, that life would be a lot different than what it is now, versus trying to live to the standard of, you have to do this or function a certain kind of way.
That's very interesting. But you know, if we did that now, that may be mild schizophrenia. That may turn into something so severe.
Well, I think as long as it's managed right, I think
Mm-hmm.
everything under the sun, there's a time and a season and purpose for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to have that conversation and being able to manage it, I think is the most important thing, right? Like I imagine myself doing certain things in real estate. I imagine myself speaking in certain veins, and I imagine myself going certain places.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in the imagination that I come out of it, and then I say, "Listen, am I doing the work that gets the fruit of my imagination?"
Yeah, the visualization. I like
Yeah.
that. Would you like to share anything else today?
Listen, I would really want to say to anyone that is in here, you might be at a roadblock. You might be trying to figure out what is the next step. You might be able to try to say, how do I navigate from where I am and how do I mature and grow? It really is going to boil down to mentality, right? If you have the right mentality and the mindset, and you have the people around you that are pouring into your mindset to help it grow and evolve and develop, then you can accomplish anything. Like there's nothing that you can't do. Like when I think about the Elon Musk of the world, and I think about the Jeff Bezos and the Kanye West and the Jay-Z's of the world, when I think about these people, they have the same mind in their head that you have. They've just tapped into different abilities to use their mind, their gifts. They're even using some of their diagnosis to help them get to where they are because they see differently, they think differently, they function differently. And it's not bad, but it's important that if you discover it, that once you do discover it, that you commit to it, right? And you really see it
Mhm.
all the way through and you allow the people around you to help nurture you. Again, Michael Jordan didn't become who he was unless his father put a basketball in his hand. And so there's somebody out there that needs you to put a basketball in their hand, and then there's someone out there that has the ability to put a basketball in yours. Because to some people you'll be the puller upper, then to some people they'll pull you up, right? And so I think it's very important that we focus on that and we narrow down to say, listen, what do I want to become? Who do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish? How soon do I want to accomplish? And what a level of accountability am I going to give to the people around me to help me get to where I want to
Wow. That's true discovery. I
be?
knew you were talking about discovery today. So there's one more gentleman, Nikolai Ganguly. No, Nikolai Gogol. That's the name. And I have the book. And it's interesting. He's a hypochondriac, but he's a writer. So hypochondriac is when you have psychosis and schizophrenia, but he's a known writer. I believe he was Russian. I just started the book like last year. I didn't finish. It's on my shelf, but it's really interesting that how you were saying that with diagnosis, et cetera, like you can still be somebody and make an impact, and he had a severe, right, disease, what we would say of the mind, but he was a great author, such as, when people have autism, but they're very creative, like
Yeah.
great painters and things. So it's really interesting that no matter what you have, there's people who don't have arms, who paint with their feet. It's like, it really doesn't matter. It's like, it's you do with what you got, like how Les says, and where you are.
I think it's really, do you have the will to do it in
Yeah.
spite of the setback? And I think most people look at situations and say, I can't. And they don't look at the situation and say, how can I? And so every obstacle that I face, I never say I can't. I say, well, listen, how can I get this done? And it forces my mind to think about other ways in order to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish. And so that's important. Like, how can I versus can't will be the right direction that you can take in order to accomplish things that you never thought that you'd be able to.
I like that. And yeah, those aren't words in my vocab. I can't try, like, all those kind of things. Like, no. It
I,
was so great having you on today and you sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. And listen, it's always great to talk to you. Thank you for this opportunity. Super excited to be here.
It's fun. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. Miss Karen. And anyone else who watches this.